Finally got it. No more static. I can finally take a break now.
Yeah, it's not completely correct yet, brother. We're still having a issue with the video side of things. More specifically, the visual side of things.
What are you talking about? It's working just fine. I'm seeing over here that it's transmitting just fine.
Well, I can tell you otherwise. Just looking at my system here, it doesn't show it's actually transmitting the visual portion more like the audio. So we're kind of doing a more of a podcast or a ASMR type of thing.
What? What are you talking about? Podcast, ASMR? I thought we were just taking readings of us doing these different books and everything and transmitting it to the human realm.
Well, yes, that's what we are doing. And, well, I think brother wanted us to have a visual appeal.
Visual peer, they know who we are, so who cares?
Well, I think for the entertainment purposes, everybody kind of cares. Don't you think so?
Not really. I really don't care. Like, I do enjoy plays, but that's like more of a, a live thing to do. I don't watch these things you call videos usually, it's never really heard of it, honestly, just not my thing.
Well, it's all the rage nowadays. Podcasts are too, but videos are the biggest thing. Now, both of you, I would continue this conversation, but we really got to get into the next story. So, let's see what we have here.
Oh, I did find something for us to read. Let me see if I can... Aha! Here it is.
I can't believe you found it. Found it? I didn't even know it was lost to begin with. I thought we actually tossed it out.
Nope, we didn't toss it out. We just lent it to somebody and haven't got it back in a while. I actually had to ask for it back.
I'm actually so excited for today's reading. Brother, you should do it.
Me? Why should I do it? He's the one who actually reads.
Well, honestly, you got the voice for it this time. So why don't you read it?
Okay, fine. I guess we gotta do the intro first.
Actually, I was thinking about this after listening to the audio files and, doing all the editing and everything else. I think we should just have whoever is doing the recording for the day or the book for the day should be the one who does the intro. Does it really sound that bad? I always thought it sounded good. It's not bad, but it feel like it'll clear up the audio a little better.
Oh, whatever. Let's just get to it. Hello, my Hellhounds. It's time for a bedtime story. I'm your host, Cerberus, or also known as Cerberus. And today we are going to be reading Scary Stories 3, More Tales to Chill Your Bones. This is collected from folklore and retold by Alvin Schwartz. Drawings by Stefan Gamel. So, for those who are not familiar with this book, it's actually a collection of very, very short stories. So we're going to actually read multiple stories out of this for today. So, the first story I'm going to read is called Faster and Faster. Sam and his cousin Bob went walking in the woods. The only sounds were leaves rustling and now again, a bird chirping. It's so quiet here, Bob whispered, but that soon changed. After a few minutes, the two boys started whooping and hollering and chasing one another around. Sam ducked behind a tree when Bob came by. Sam jumped out at him. Then Bob raced ahead and hid behind a bush. When he looked down, there at his feet was an old drum. Sam, see what I found, he called. It looks like a tom-tom. I bet it's 100 years old. Look at the red stains on it, said Sam. I bet it's somebody's blood. Let's get out of here. But Bob could not resist trying the drum. He sat on the ground and held it between his legs. He beat on it with one hand, then the other, slowly at first, and faster, almost as if he could not stop. Suddenly, there were shouts in the woods and the sound of hoofbeats. A cloud of dust rose from behind a line of trees. Then men on horseback galloped toward them. "Bob, let's go!" Sam shouted. He began to run. "Hurry!" Bob dropped the drum and ran after him. Sam heard the twang of a bow firing an arrow. Then he heard Bob scream. When Sam turned, he saw Bob pitch forward dead. But there was no arrow in his body, and there was no wound. And when the police searched, there were no men on horseback, and there were no hoof prints, and there was no drum. The only sounds were leaves rustling, and now and again a bird chirping. Just let that settle in. Creepy. Okay, so here is the next story we're going to be reading. It's called Just Delicious. George Flint loved to eat. Each day at noon, he closed his camera shop for 2 hours and went home for a big lunch. His wife, Mina, cooked for him. George was a bully, and Mina was a timid woman who did everything he asked because she was afraid of him. On his way home for lunch one day, George stopped at the butcher shop and bought a pound of liver. He loved liver. He would have Mina cook it for dinner that night. Despite all his complaints about her, she was a very good cook. While George ate his lunch, Mina told him that a rich old woman in town had died. Her body was in the church next door. It was in an open coffin. Anyone who wanted to see her could. As usual, George was not interested in what Mina had to say. "I've got to go back to work," he told her. After he left, Mina began to cook the liver. She added vegetables and spices and simmered it all afternoon, just the way George liked it. When she thought it was done, she cut off a small piece and tasted it. It was delicious, the best she had ever made. She ate a second piece, then a third. It was so good she could not stop eating it. It was only when the liver was all gone that she thought of George. He would be coming home soon. What would he do when he found that she had eaten all the liver? Some men would laugh, but not George. He would be angry and mean, and she did not want to face that again. But where could she get another piece of liver that late in the day? Then she remembered the old woman lying in the church next door waiting to be buried. George said he had... Whoa, did I miss a page? Oh, waiting to be buried. Wow, that is a weird way to cut that. Okay, I don't remember it being cut like that. So I'm assuming he ate. George said he never had a better dinner. "Have some liver, Mina," he said. "It's delicious." "I'm not hungry," she said. "You finish it." That night, after George had fallen asleep, Mina sat in bed trying to read, but all she could think about was what she had done. Then she thought she heard a woman's voice. "Who has my liver?" it asked. "Who has it?" Was it her imagination? Was she dreaming? Now the voice was closer. "Who has my liver?" it asked. "Who has it?" Mina wanted to run. No, she whispered. "I don't have it. I don't have your liver." Now the voice was right next to her. "Who has my liver?" it asked. "Who has it?" Mina froze with terror. She pointed to George. "He does," she said. "He has it." Suddenly the light went out and George screamed and screamed. Now this one's a good one because it reminds me so much of our little Hellhounds. Don't you agree?
I actually do agree, honestly. It really does. The title, The Black Dog, is actually very fitting for this, don't you think?
Yes, that's why I wanted to read it. Anyway, like we said, the title is The Black Dog. It was 11 o'clock at night. Peter Rothenberg was in bed on the second floor of the old house where he lived alone. It had gotten so chilly he went downstairs to turn up the heat. As Peter was on his way back to bed, a black dog ran down the stairs. It passed him and disappeared into the darkness. "Where did you come from?" Peter said. He had never seen that dog before. He turned on all the lights and looked in every room. He could not find the dog anywhere. He went outside and brought in the two watchdogs he kept in the backyard, but they acted as if they were the only dogs in the house. The next night, again at 11 o'clock, Peter was in his bedroom. He heard what sounded like a dog walking around in the room above him. He dashed upstairs and threw open the door. The room was empty. He looked under the bed. He looked in the closet. Nothing. But when he got back into his bedroom, he heard a dog running down the stairs. It was the black dog. He tried to follow it, but again, he could not find where it had gone. From then on, every night at 11, Peter heard the dog walking in the room above him. The room was always empty, but after he left, the dog would come out of hiding, run down the stairs, and disappear. One night, Peter's neighbor waited with him for the dog. At the usual time, they heard it above them. Then they heard it on the stairs. When they went out into the hall, it was standing at the foot of the stairs looking up at them. The neighbor whistled and the dog wagged its tail. Then it was gone. Things went on this way until the night Peter decided to bring his watchdogs into the house again. Maybe this time they would find the black dog and drive it away. Just before 11, he took them up to his bedroom and left the door open. Then he heard the black dog moving around above him. His dogs pricked up their ears and ran to the door. Suddenly, they bared their teeth and snarled and backed away. Peter could not see the black dog or hear it, but he was sure that it had entered his room. His dog barked and snapped. They darted forward nervously, then backed away again. Suddenly, one of them yelped. It began bleeding, then dropped to the floor. Its neck torn open. A minute later, it was dead. Peter's other dog backed into a corner, whimpering. Then everything was still. The next night, Peter's neighbor came back with a pistol. Again, they waited in his bedroom. At 11 o'clock, the black dog came down the stairs as before. It looked up at them and wagged its tail. When they started toward it with the pistol, it growled and disappeared. That was the last Peter saw of the black dog, but did not mean that the dog was gone. Now and then, always at 11, he heard it moving around above him. Once he heard it running down the stairs, he never managed to see it again, but he knew that it was there. Alright, I think we got little bit more time for two stories, don't you think?
Yeah, I think we have the time for that. We're not running too late here. Yes, I think we can do two more. It looks like the one is actually fairly short for you.
Yes, I do agree on this one. Alright, this next story is called Like Cat's Eyes. As Jim Brand lay dying, his wife left him with his nurse and went into the next room to rest. She sat in the dark, staring into the night. Suddenly, Mrs. Brand saw headlights come rapidly up the driveway. Oh no, she thought, I don't want visitors now. Not now, but it wasn't a car bringing a visitor. It was an old hearse with maybe half a dozen small men hanging from the side. At least that's what it looked like. The hearse screeched to a stop. The men jumped off and stared up at her, their eyes glowing with a soft yellow light like a cat's eyes. She watched with horror as they disappeared into the house. An instant later, they were back, lifting something into the hearse. Then they drove off at high speed, wheels squealing, the gravel in the driveway flying in all directions. At that moment, the nurse came in to say that Jim Brand had died. Told you that was short. Hey, we need one more. This one should scare the pants off of people. This is a story called Harold. When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months, then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but it was boring. All day the two men tended to their cows. At night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything. Let's make a doll the size of a man, he said. It would be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare away the birds. It should look like Harold, Alfred said. Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made the doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and tiny eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night, they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained. When they were feeling playful, they would talk to him. One of them might say, "How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?" Then the other, making believe he was Harold, would answer in his crazy voice, "Very slowly." They both would laugh, but not Harold. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick him or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they both were sick of, and smear it on the doll's face. "How do you like that stew, Harold?" he would ask. "Well, you better eat it, or else." Then the two men would howl with laughter. One night, after Thomas had wiped Harold's face with food, Harold grunted. "Did you hear that?" Alfred asked. "It was Harold," Thomas said. "I was watching it when it happened. I can't believe it." "How could he grunt?" Alfred asked. "He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible." "Let's throw him in the fire," said Thomas, "and that would be that." "Let's not do anything stupid," said Alfred. "We don't know what's going on. When we move the cows down, we'll leave him behind for now. Let's just keep an eye on him." So they left Harold sitting in a corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the dog grunted, but that was all. After a few days, they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten into Harold and were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning, they would put Harold out in the garden, and each night they would bring him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever. Then one night, Alfred noticed something that frightened him. "Harold is growing," he said. "I was thinking the same thing," Thomas said. "Maybe it's just our imaginations," Alfred replied. "We have been up here on this mountain too long." The next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth, like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night long he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in the far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid. They decided to take the cows down in the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Neither one wanted to go back for them, but the stools would cost a lot to replace. "There really is nothing to be afraid of," they told one another. "After all, what could a doll do?" They drew straws to see which one would go back. It was Thomas. "I'll catch up with you," he said. Alfred walked on towards the valley. When Alfred came to the rise in the path, he looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere. But he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun. Oh, that's a keeper. Ah, what a good story.
Yes, I do believe this book has quite a few good short stories in it. But maybe next time we'll choose something else.
Hey, this isn't that bad. This is great for the little ones.
Yeah, I remember this actually being quite scary when we were young.
Yeah, that's true, but I think we gotta do our outro. Should I just roll us out?
Yes, I think we should keep it as one person does the intro, and that same person will do the outro as well.
All right, very good. Now, our little hellhounds, I hope you enjoyed Scary Stories 3, More Tales to Chill Your Bones. Collected from folklore and retold by Alvin, Schwartz, drawings by Stephen Gamel. Or Gamel. Now, we wish all of our little hellhounds a pleasant dreams.